You never think it is going to happen to you. Not really. My name is James Holloway, 34 years old, active duty in the United States Army. I had spent most of my adult life either deployed overseas or training stateside, living out of duffel bags and memorizing my schedule by the sound of boots on concrete. The day my world started crumbling wasn't some cinematic explosion. No shouting match. No slammed doors. It came in the form of a manila envelope sitting quietly on the kitchen table of our small rented house in Fayetteville, North Carolina. No note. No explanation. Just divorce papers. Her name, Anna, printed neatly next to mine. Signature already there, crisp black ink. Final. Cold. I just stood there for a while, my hands still dirty from changing the oil in the truck, staring at that envelope like it was going to dissolve if I waited long enough. I did not flip the table. I did not call her in a rage. I sat down, placed my greasy hands carefully on my knees, and stared out the window at our dying lawn. Inside, though, it felt like something had torn loose, something I could never sew back together. The next day, I started gathering my things, folding shirts into neat piles, separating my books from hers, loading my truck with all the precision I had learned in the Army. My body was moving because it had to, because that is what I had been trained to do when the world fell apart. But my mind was spinning in 1,000 directions at once. Something was wrong, and it had been wrong for a while. The more I thought about it, the more the little things started clicking into place. The late-night texting, the quick smiles that disappeared when I entered the room. The way her phone, once left carelessly on the counter, had become glued to her side. She had stopped calling me by the pet name she used to. We had stopped fighting, even, which, in hindsight, was much worse than fighting. It was silence, a silence that now felt like the calm before a hurricane. I started looking, not because I thought I could win her back. No, I knew better than that, but because I needed to know why. Where had she gone? Who had she gone to? At first, it was simple curiosity. Checking our joint bank account, seeing strange charges in places she had never visited before. Boutique coffee shops across town. A hotel reservation, one night only, during a weekend I had been out at training. The coffee shops were near an apartment complex. I mapped it out. Drove past. I did not know what I was expecting to see. Maybe her car. Maybe her standing there with a suitcase, looking guilty, looking small. Instead, I saw nothing. Empty sidewalks, the kind of quiet that hums inside your skull. It was the small details that ate away at me the most. Finding that half of her clothes were missing, not thrown in haste, but carefully taken. Seeing our wedding photo frame, still on the wall, but the picture itself removed. The way her perfume lingered on the sheets, somehow sweeter and sadder than before. I started asking around, quietly. Her best friend, Marissa, was tight-lipped, her smile stretched too thin when I bumped into her at the grocery store. My neighbor, old Mr. Jacobs, mumbled something about a strange car coming around a few weeks back, a sleek black sedan he did not recognize. But no one wanted to talk. Or maybe they just didn't want to tell me what I already feared. One night, unable to sleep, I found myself scrolling through her old social media. Anna had once posted pictures of us, me in uniform, her smiling at my side. Now, gone. Deleted. In their place were vague quotes about finding yourself and moving on from toxic situations. No pictures, no check-ins, but one comment caught my eye. A familiar name. Derek Steele, an old boyfriend of hers. I had met him once, early on. The kind of man who smiled too easily and looked at you like he already knew your weaknesses. Anna had sworn he was in the past. Ancient history, she had said. Ancient history, maybe. But ancient ghosts had a way of digging themselves out of their graves when you least expected it. I felt a dull thud in my chest. Not anger. Not sadness. Just the numb certainty that my life was no longer my own. That the woman I had built a future with had been slipping away piece by piece. And I had not even noticed until the door was already closed. The next morning, I decided to dig deeper. I had to know for sure. Whatever I found, I promised myself I would not fight it. Some battles are already lost before you even step onto the field. The hardest part about gathering information when your heart is already broken is pretending you are not. You have to move carefully, like picking through a minefield, making sure you do not blow yourself up with every memory you touch. I knew Anna would not make it easy. If she had left the papers and vanished without a word, she had no interest in fighting, no interest in fixing things. That told me she was already invested elsewhere. Probably emotionally. Maybe physically. Probably both. I started small. First, I called the landlord. Casual, polite. Told him Anna had left, and I needed to settle the lease. He seemed surprised. Said he had seen her just last week, laughing in the parking lot, slipping into a black sedan that pulled up just outside the unit. Said the guy was tall, dark-haired, younger-looking than me. I thanked him, hung up, and sat with that image. Anna laughing. Anna carefree. Anna with him. It was like pressing on a bruise you know you should leave alone. Still, I pressed harder. I went back through old emails. I remembered she had once, years ago, forwarded me a string of high school reunion invites. Derek's name was on a few. It did not take much to search him online. New Instagram. Public profile. And there he was, a little heavier, maybe a little more lined around the eyes, but still the same smirk. Still the same air of someone who thought life was a game he could always win. He had moved back to Fayetteville 3 months ago. Perfect timing. His feed was all inspirational quotes about second chances and real love finding its way home, sprinkled between pictures of classic cars and barbecue weekends. No mention of Anna, of course, but he had checked in at that boutique coffee shop near the apartments more than once. I started writing it all down, like I was working a case. Timelines. Connections. I even drove by the coffee shop again, parking across the street. Hours passed with no sign of her. Just college kids studying, old couples walking dogs, the occasional teenager blasting music too loud from their car. Still, the feeling stayed. That gnawing, hollow certainty that something was happening just beyond my reach. The next move was riskier. Marissa, Anna's best friend, keeper of secrets. I texted her, casual. Hey, you seen Anna? She left me the papers, but I need to return a few things. The typing bubble popped up, then disappeared. A full 5 minutes before she answered. Sorry, James. I think it's better you move on. She's figuring things out. Figuring things out. What a gentle way to say starting over without you. I knew Marissa would not tell me more, not over text, not willingly. But she had a weakness. Every Friday night, she hit the same bar downtown with her coworkers. It was easy enough to sit at the far end of the room, nursing a beer, watching her and her friends gossip over nachos and bad cover bands. I did not have to wait long. Halfway through the second band set, Marissa pulled out her phone, laughing with the girl next to her. She showed her screen. I caught a glimpse. A photo. Anna, in a tight red dress, standing way too close to a man in a leather jacket. They were laughing, arms around each other like no one else existed. Even across the bar, I recognized Derek's smug face. It hit me low, sharp. Not rage. Not jealousy. Just a cold acceptance, like a final puzzle piece sliding into place. Anna had found her way back to the man she used to love. The one she had compared me to in subtle, cutting ways when she thought I wasn't paying attention. The one she swore was ancient history. I left before the band finished their third song. I drove the long way home, past darkened strip malls and empty parking lots, thinking about the life I thought we had built. A life I had believed in with the blind loyalty of a soldier following orders. She had called our life empty, I realized. Somewhere along the way, I had become the ghost haunting our marriage, showing up in photos, wearing the right uniform, saying the right words, but never there in the way she needed. Or maybe it had never been enough. Maybe it never could be. I parked in front of the house for a long time, engine running, hands gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. Then I made a decision. I was not going to fight for someone who had already surrendered. I was not going to dig myself deeper into a grave she had already buried me in. I would find the full truth, because I had to. For myself. For whatever pieces of me were still salvageable. And then, when I knew everything, I would let her go. When you start pulling on the loose threads of your life, you better be prepared for everything to come unraveled. The next few days passed in a strange fog, like I was watching my own life from outside my body. I went through the motions, cleaning out the house, canceling the utilities, boxing up the reminders of a marriage that had already been erased by someone else's hand. But inside, there was a growing itch, a restlessness I could not shake. Anna's betrayal was bad enough, but something about it did not sit right. It was not just that she left. It was how she left. The cold efficiency of it. The way she had been planning, orchestrating everything while I was still thinking we had a future. I started to wonder, had I been the only one blind? Or had others known? It was a stupid idea, but I could not help myself. I called her mother. Mrs. Reynolds had never liked me much. Too rigid, she once said. Too married to my work. Still, when she picked up the phone, there was an edge to her voice I had not heard before. James, she said curtly, this really isn't a good time. I just want to know if Anna's okay, I said, keeping my voice flat. She's fine, Mrs. Reynolds snapped. She's happier now. There was a beat of silence. Then she added, almost like she could not help herself. Maybe if you had been around more. I hung up before she could finish. So that was it. They had picked their side. Maybe they always had. The more I thought about it, the more the pieces started clicking together. The last few holidays where Anna had insisted on staying home to rest instead of visiting family with me. The sudden trips to visit Marissa that never added up. The way my own parents had stopped asking about her, like they sensed something dying between us. I felt like a fool. Worse than a fool. A stranger in my own marriage. I needed more. I needed confirmation, not just assumptions and half-seen Instagram posts. So I did something I am not proud of. I logged into her old iCloud account. She had once given me the password, years ago, back when trust between us was a living, breathing thing. She had changed most of it. Her photos, her emails, wiped clean. But she had not disconnected her old Find My iPhone feature. And there it was. A pin. Downtown. A second-floor apartment above a yoga studio. Not the place we had shared. Not even close. I waited until dusk. Parked down the block. Watched from the shadows. After about an hour, I saw her. Anna. Hair pulled back, wearing jeans and a soft sweater I did not recognize. She was laughing, head tilted back, hand resting lightly on a man's chest as they stood by his car. Derek. He looked smug, like he had already won a prize he had not deserved. I should have felt rage. I should have felt the need to stomp over there and demand answers. But instead, I just felt hollow. Like I was watching two strangers play out a scene in a movie I no longer had a part in. They kissed. Casual, familiar. Like they had been doing it for months. Maybe they had. I sat there for a long time after they disappeared inside, staring at the dark windows, feeling the last bits of my old life sifting through my fingers like sand. I had my answer now. There was nothing left to salvage. Still, something gnawed at the edge of my mind. It was not just the affair. It was the feeling that I had been targeted, set up, and when I thought back over the past few months, a pattern started to emerge. The anonymous texts when I was overseas. The random tips to my CO about supposed misconduct. Nothing ever proven, but enough to get me side-eyed by the chain of command. The way Anna had become more distant right after one of those accusations. It was not random. It was coordinated. And if I was right, it meant Derek had not just wormed his way back into her life. He had been helping push me out. Maybe Anna had let him. Maybe she had needed the excuse. Either way, it was no longer just a story of betrayal. It was a story of betrayal and manipulation. I leaned back in my truck seat, staring up at the stars. I could not fight this the way I fought enemies overseas. There were no weapons here. No battle plans. There was only cold, quiet truth. I would finish packing. I would sign whatever papers needed signing. I would walk away from the ruins they had left me. But before I left for good, I would make sure I understood exactly how deep the knives had been buried. No more guessing. No more hoping. I was going to find out everything. And then, I was going to let them rot in the life they had chosen without me. When you train as a soldier, you learn two things that matter when the world falls apart. Patience and precision. I had spent too many nights in hostile territory, listening to the scrape of boots outside a thin tent wall, knowing that survival depended on what you heard and what you ignored. I leaned on that now, because if I rushed, if I let anger take over, I would lose what little ground I still had. I spent the next few days quietly tying up loose ends. I cleaned out the house, sold what I could, donated what I could not bear to look at. When I dropped the house keys off with the landlord, he gave me a strange look, half pity, half discomfort. He knew, or at least he knew enough. I stayed in a cheap motel just outside of town. One of those places with flickering neon lights and threadbare carpets that smelled of bleach and old cigarettes. It suited me. No memories here. No ghosts. From there, I worked methodically. First step, gathering facts. No emotions. No assumptions. Just facts. I started with Derek. It was easier than it should have been. The guy lived loud, social media posts, public check-ins, endless photos of himself living his best life. But it was not just him. Anna's digital fingerprints were everywhere if you knew where to look. They had been meeting up months before she left me. Not just coffee shops, weekend trips, little out-of-town places where no one would know them. There were receipts, geotags, stray comments from mutual friends. I also found texts, old backups Anna must have forgotten about. One, from Derek, a few months back, burned itself into my brain. You deserve more than just waiting around for a ghost. I can give you a real life. A life you deserve. And her reply? I know. I just need to be brave enough. Brave. That is what she called it. Walking away from a man who would have laid down his life for her. Second step, understanding the depth of it. It was not just love rekindled. It was strategy. There were notes, schedules, texts coordinating when I would be out of town, when I would be unreachable. Derek had helped her plan the exit. He had helped her time it perfectly, right down to when my next deployment cycle would have made it harder for me to contest anything legally. Property, money, even reputation. It was not just about love. It was about leaving me broken enough that I would not fight back. Third step, uncovering the others involved. It turned out Marissa had been more than a bystander. She had covered for Anna more than once, lying about trips, fabricating emergencies when Anna needed an alibi. Maybe she thought she was helping a friend find true love. Maybe she just liked the drama. Either way, she had played her part well. I also found out Derek's family had a small legal practice in town. Just enough influence to suggest quick divorce proceedings, to whisper in the right ears if needed. Nothing illegal, nothing provable. But the web was there, clear as day once you knew what you were looking at. I was not just dealing with a broken marriage. I was dealing with a coordinated extraction. Anna had not just fallen out of love. She had escaped. From me. I sat with that realization for a long time. It would have been easy to hate her. Easy to hate them all. But hate is heavy. It anchors you to the thing you were trying to escape. And I was done being anchored to a life that no longer existed. One night, sitting in the battered armchair of the motel, I pulled out a notebook and made a final list. What I had lost. A wife who never truly loved me enough to stay. Friends who chose convenience over loyalty. A house filled with memories that were never real. What I still had. My integrity. My future. My freedom. It was not much. But it was something. Enough to build on. The next morning, I signed the final divorce papers. No fight. No drama. I dropped them off at the lawyer's office, the one she had picked, of course, and walked out into the sunlight, feeling strangely light for the first time in months. I had uncovered everything I needed to know, and now it was time to let the ruins burn themselves out without me. There would be no revenge, no confrontation, no desperate pleas for explanations. They could have each other. They could build their real life on the wreckage they had made. As for me, I was done looking back. There was a whole world still out there, and somewhere in it, a place where I could start over, not as someone's soldier, someone's ghost, someone's second choice, but as myself. James Holloway, 34, alive, and finally free. There is something strange about real freedom. It does not come with fireworks. It does not come with a marching band playing a triumphant song. It comes with silence. Heavy, echoing silence. I packed the last of my things into the truck, duffel bags, boxes of uniforms, a few books I could not bear to throw away. The motel room looked almost exactly as it had when I checked in. Empty, temporary, forgettable. Just the way I needed it to be. There was no goodbye to say. No one waiting for me outside. No last-minute apology from Anna. No tearful confession from Marissa. No Derek trying to rub salt in the wound. They had moved on. And now, so would I? I pulled onto the highway, the engine humming steady under my hands. The road stretched out before me, long and empty and clean. I drove without thinking, the landscape blurring by, pine trees, gas stations, abandoned farms. Nothing tied me to this place anymore. Nothing held me here but memories, and memories were lighter than they used to be. At a diner 2 towns over, I stopped for coffee. The waitress, a woman about my age with tired eyes and a friendly smile, poured it without asking if I wanted cream or sugar. I sat there for a while, hands wrapped around the chipped ceramic mug, listening to the low murmur of strangers' conversations. A couple argued softly in the corner booth about vacation plans. An old man read a newspaper, chuckling to himself. A group of teenage kids jostled each other at the counter, trying to act tougher than they felt. Life went on, and I realized, somewhere between the first and second cup of coffee, that I wanted life to go on for me too. Not out of spite. Not to prove anything to Anna or Derek or Marissa, but because I deserved it. I had spent so long thinking my life was tied to someone else's shadow, tied to promises whispered in the dark, to futures built on fragile hope. But the truth was simpler, harsher, and cleaner. My life was mine. Always had been. I had just forgotten. Later that afternoon, I found myself pulling into a small town about 3 hours west. A place called Ashfield, barely a dot on the map. One main street, one gas station, one church. It was nothing special, and that was exactly what I needed. I rented a small cabin on the edge of town, surrounded by woods and the quiet hum of nature. No neighbors asking questions. No memories lurking in the corners. The first night there, I built a fire in the small stone fireplace, sat on the floor with a blanket wrapped around my shoulders, and watched the flames eat away at the dry wood. I thought about Anna, about what we had and what we never really had, about how easily love could turn into absence, and how absence could turn into something even colder. But for the first time, the memories did not gut me. They just floated by. Images. Ghosts. Nothing more. I slept better that night than I had in months. The next morning, I woke up to sunlight pouring through the cabin windows, birds singing somewhere deep in the trees. I made coffee, real coffee, not motel sludge, and sat on the porch, breathing in the crisp, clean air. No deployments looming. No broken marriage waiting to shatter further. No obligations except to myself. It was not a new life yet, but it was the beginning of one. And beginnings, I was starting to learn, were quieter than endings. They came not with a bang, but with a breath. Later that week, I found a job working at a local hardware store, part-time, enough to keep busy, enough to rebuild something steady under my feet. The owner, Mr. Carter, was an old Marine who did not ask too many questions. He just shook my hand, looked me in the eye, and said, "Show up on time. Work hard. We're good." It was the first handshake I had in a long time that felt like it mattered. In the evenings, I walked the woods behind the cabin, listening to the sound of my own footsteps crunching through fallen leaves, the wind whispering secrets through the trees. Out here, no one knew who I used to be. No one cared who I had failed to become. I was just James, a man figuring it out one broken piece at a time. And somehow, in that quiet, I started to believe that maybe, just maybe, I was going to be okay. Maybe even better than okay. Maybe, someday, I would even be whole again. The thing about truly moving on is that life has a funny way of testing you. You can think you have buried the past, packed it away neatly, but sometimes it finds a way to claw back into the daylight when you least expect it. It happened on a Thursday, a slow afternoon at the hardware store. I was stacking bags of mulch in the garden section when I heard my phone buzz deep in my pocket. A number I did not recognize. No name. No voicemail. Normally, I would have ignored it. But something, some old instinct, made me step out back and call it. It rang twice. Then a woman answered. "James." The voice was thin, uncertain, but I recognized it immediately. Anna. For a second, the world tilted sideways, the way it used to when I heard incoming mortars whistle overhead. But I caught myself, steadied my breathing. "Yeah," I said, my voice flat. "What do you want?" There was a pause. I could hear her breathing. I imagined her somewhere far away, twirling the phone cord around her finger like she used to when she was nervous. I thought you should hear it from me," she said finally. "Derek and we're over." I said nothing. She rushed ahead, filling the silence the way she always did when she was scared. "It was a mistake," she said. "He's not who I thought he was. He lied. About everything. He's moving out. I'm alone." She waited for me to say something that would make her feel better. But there was nothing left to give. I leaned against the back wall of the store, the sun warm against my face, and realized, deep down, I felt nothing. No anger. No satisfaction. No grief. She was just a voice on the other end of the line. A ghost calling from a life I had already left behind. "I'm sorry you're going through that," I said, because it was the truth. And because it cost me nothing to say it. Another pause. I could almost hear her trying to find the right words to pull me back, to make me care. "I was stupid," she whispered. "I threw everything away." I thought about the way she had laughed with Derek in the parking lot. The way she had kissed him like I was already dead and buried. "You made your choice," I said quietly. "We both did." It was not bitterness. It was just a fact. She made a small sound, a choked-off sob. But I stayed silent. I had learned something out here, in the quiet. Some things are not yours to fix. Some people are not yours to save. I hope you find what you're looking for, I said. Then I ended the call. I stood there for a moment after, letting the weight of it settle. It felt like closing a door that had been stuck open for too long, letting the cold seep in. When I walked back inside, Mr. Carter just nodded at me like he knew. No questions. No judgment. That night, at the cabin, I built a fire. Not because I needed the warmth. Spring was already softening the air, but because there was something about watching things burn that felt right. I took out the last box I had kept locked in the truck, an old shoebox full of letters, photos, scraps of a life that was no longer mine. I fed them to the flames, one by one. Our wedding photo, our first anniversary card, the ticket stubs from a concert where she had held my hand like it meant something. The fire crackled and roared, hungry for it all. And when the last picture curled into ash, I sat back, feeling lighter than I had in years. Anna was gone, not just from my house, not just from my phone, gone from the place inside me where I had carried her like a scar. I looked up at the stars bleeding into the night sky and thought about everything ahead of me. It would not be easy. There would still be bad days, nights when the loneliness pressed in around the edges. But for the first time, those possibilities did not scare me. I had been forged in worse fires. I had survived harder battles. I was not just surviving anymore. I was living. And that, I realized, was the sweetest kind of revenge. Not anger, not bitterness, not sadness. Just freedom. Just peace. Life did not change overnight. There was no grand revelation. Just small steps. Morning started earlier now. Coffee on the porch. Quiet walks through the woods, where the air smelled like pine and earth instead of regret. At the hardware store, I began to know the regulars. Old Mr. Delaney, who came in every Tuesday for birdseed. Jenna, the schoolteacher, always needing paint or nails for some project. No one asked about my past. No one cared who I used to be. And that was exactly what I needed. Some evenings, I joined the others at Carter's, a rough little bar at the edge of town. We played darts, told bad jokes, argued about football. Normal. Simple. It felt strange at first, this easy kind of living. Like wearing new boots that had not yet molded to your feet. But slowly, it began to fit. One night, sitting by the fire behind the cabin, I realized I had not thought about Anna once that day. Not in anger. Not in sadness. Not at all. It was not forgetting. It was healing. A quiet understanding settled over me. She had been part of my story, but she was not my story. Not anymore. And that realization was worth more than all the apologies she could ever offer. Spring came fast to Ashfield. One morning, the woods exploded with green, and it felt like even the earth had decided to start over. So did I. I found a small apartment near Main Street. Signed the lease without hesitation. No memories to erase. Only new ones to build. At work, I got offered a full-time spot. Mr. Carter said he liked having someone who showed up when they said they would. Simple words. But they meant more than he knew. Some nights, I sat by the window, watching the town lights flicker on one by one. No bitterness. No regrets. Only a strange, steady peace. Anna was a closed chapter. Derek was a forgotten line. The road ahead was wide open. And for the first time in a long time, I was not afraid to walk it alone. Life did not owe me anything. And somehow, that made it beautiful.